Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the mayor, Heath Sheeran, and the host of this podcast. And I'm glad you're here today because we're going to be getting into some really cool stuff today. We're going to be talking about AI and what John's doing at his company with regards to AI. And he works with Limit AI. He's the founder or co-founder, I should say. And you're going to hear all about his story in a minute. So before we get into that, I want to talk to you about my friends over at Smart Choice, the fastest growing agency network, hands down. 10,000 agencies across the country, 11 billion in premium, agency friendly contracts. Whether you need one market or a million, whether you want to be a part of a family, whether you're looking for to increase your contingencies, your bonuses, if you're looking to just reach out to other carriers, other agents, and just being a part of this. They also help you in E&S markets, and they help you to grow your niches. They just help you in a lot of ways. Go to smartchoiceagents.com. It is the smart choice. Guys, also my friends over at Canopy Connect. Go to usecanopy.com/Heath and make sure you check them out. Tolga is my good buddy, been with me since like almost day one. And you guys continue to reach out to me and tell me how much you love working with them, because they're not just a one-click solution to getting the deck pages you need to quote your prospect, but they're also a part of the entire onboarding process. They're a part of your whole customer journey, and they want to continue to be that for you. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to make sure you go check out their website and get a demo, get a discount. You won't be sorry. Also, oldschoolmarketing.com. OLDE schoolmarketing.com. You want to go check them out. Rusty and his team do a really good job taking a new school approach to an old school way of marketing with digital as well. But guys, this old school marketing method of direct mail pieces, it's a game changer the way they do it. It's totally different. And I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger there because you're going to have to reach out to them and find out what they're doing. It's a drip style, so you're going to have your phone ringing all the time. It's handwritten notes. The way he does things, his mind just works in a way that nobody else's does. So you're going to go to oldschoolmarketing.com. Now, guys, I'm going to slide away so we can get into this conversation with my friend, John Lober. John Lober, my man, what's going on, brother?
Heath, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be on.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about it, especially, with having a great introduction from my man, Broker Brett, who everyone in Insurance Town knows that name because he's been on here a gazillion times. Shout out to my main man, Broker Brett in California. Love you, brother. Thanks for the introduction. And I've loved the conversation you and I have had and talking about AI and talking about building something special and something new. And so I think that's really cool. So you're in New York, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Are you native from New York? Broker didn't give me that.
No. I grew up overseas.
Oh,
I
did
moved to
you?
the States for college,
Okay.
and then I lived in Chicago for 4 years for undergrad. Then I was out in San Francisco for 5, and then I moved to New York, where I've been for the last 2.5.
Awesome. So where are you from? Like, where'd you grow up then?
I grew up in Switzerland.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, you got that American accent down pretty well, man. When we
Well,
talk, I would have never known.
I've been here for 13 years now, so it rubs off, slowly but surely.
Now it's gotta get you saying y'all and stuff like that, and I can get you a southern accent.
That's right.
That would be fun. All right, man. So I again, I can't wait for the audience to hear what you and I have already been talking about, what Broker Brett's talking to me about, because there's some pretty cool stuff going on. And right now, and I'll save the good stuff for in a minute. Before we get into anything, I would love for the audience to get to know you like I already have. So, John Lober, if you could just kind of take a quick walk down memory lane and tell everybody, you've already told us your background and like where you're from, but what brought you
Mhm.
here? Where would you first dip your toes in the insurance industry? And tell me a little bit where you are. Lead me up to today.
Sure. Yeah. So when I went to undergrad, it's kind of topical. I got really interested in machine learning.
Yeah.
It was in kind of 2014 that some of the first papers on generative AI came out, and there was a relatively kind of small wave of buzz back then, but it piqued the
Yeah.
interest of me and a lot of classmates, and so I focused on that in undergrad. and I thought it was really interesting, right? People were generating kind of images for the first time, the way which is now grown into kind of full scale applications like Dolly or Midjourney.
Right.
And I was wondering, what do I do with this interest? I'd also been interested in financial markets. I thought, oh, maybe I'll go kind of price risk professionally. I'll go trade options or something. But then I got into these conversations about pricing cyber risk and cyber insurance. And then I kind of cut my teeth on that. I was the first engineering hire at Coalition and spent 3 years there, kind of learning about insurance and building out all of these
Awesome.
systems for transacting these insurance products. And that was my first kind of foray into the industry. And then I was getting together with a couple of friends, and we'd been kicking around some business ideas. None of them good.
Isn't that usually
But
how it
if
goes?
right.
Especially if there's drinking involved.
Indeed. Well, just tea in our case for our evening get-togethers. But um,
Right.
eventually, kind of dawned on us. Well, we could do something in insurance and take a stab at some of these kind of insurance transactional workflows that we had otherwise kind of been on the other side of,
Yeah.
and enable retail agents to do business faster, better, cheaper, right? Basically,
Yes.
we had observed that there's a whole lot of paperwork in this transactional value chain, right? There's a lot of phone calls, there's a lot of PDFs getting sent back and forth. And it just seemed like there was a lot of back and forth that could be reduced if you were to try to abstract this process using software, right? So we set out to
Yes.
start Limit as a digital wholesale insurance broker, kind of with the mission of connecting retail agents with carriers in a digital way that enables them to do business faster. So we gave them like an online portal that they could use to have one simple application that they can share with the client, and then that goes out to all of the markets digitally.
Okay.
And ideally, they get quotes back, like bindable quotes, in a couple of seconds. Um, we focus
So is
that
that similar?
on.
Let me ask you real quick. Is that similar to like and we can get into this later, but is that similar like a supplemental app? Because everybody
Uh,
has their own accords they want, and you're talking about one app, or is this just like an intake form?
so
Is it
in
more like,
in our
yeah.
lines, we focus mostly on pro exec stuff, so like cyber, tech, D&O,
Oh
fiduciary
yeah,
crime,
that's right. That's right. That's
um,
right.
where of course everybody has their own app, but they're all pretty similar, right? And so you
Yes.
can deduplicate some of those questions behind the scenes, and you can ask
Yes,
kind of
you're right. You're
broader
right.
catch-all
Yeah.
questions, and then uh, you can kind of build it out such that the app that you provide always kind of covers the carriers that are most likely to quote. So you're not asking too many questions, right? Like every question has a real purpose.
Right.
Um, and then once you've collected all of that information, you can quote with the carriers by API and get digitally bindable quotes back. And that's really useful, right? Because it's kind of taken this experience that otherwise involves a lot of emailing underwriters and puts it all into one digital platform where you can just kind of click through it and bind online. Um, but as you know very well firsthand, insurance has a lot of nuance, right?
Yeah.
Um, it is often not the case that you can fill out the app, quote, bind, and off you are to the races. Oftentimes there is, maybe some requirement that you need to talk with the underwriter about, or there is some, bespoke nature to the risk, right? And so
Right.
that means that, of course, you can't just do it purely digitally. You also need to build out some service, right? So we built out a whole wholesale brokerage team. We've got 12 kind of expert brokers on staff here. And those folks are handling all of these kind of service items all day, every day. And so after 3 years of being in the market here, um, it's been really interesting. We've been able to service a lot more new business than kind of a non-digital broker, but we still have just, a lot of emails that we field, right? And so
Yeah.
we looked at all of these tasks that we're getting from the retail agent, who in turn is getting them from the client, right? There are questions about coverage, the questions about claim scenarios. It's, hey, can you tell me if this policy will like respond to this event? Or, hey, I've got
Okay.
this other quote from this other market. Can you compare it to the three other options that you've already provided? And you know how this goes, right? There's a lot
Yeah.
of like, okay, sure, let me go download the policy, control F, look through it, and you kind of write up my notes. And it's even more laborious when you have to compare, you have to do that for like multiple options, right? And so our kind of technologist view here was, well, these are all tasks that are about expertise, and they're about processing documents. They're about knowledge, right? Um, and we've had a bunch of really powerful AI tools come out over the last couple of years that do exactly this, right? They're quite good at encoding knowledge,
Yeah.
and they're quite good at reading documents. Can we kind of put these together, put them into an insurance specific context, and help our staff internally cut through all of this labor in a kind of faster, easier way, save them a lot of time and energy? So we did that. We started that about a year ago.
Okay.
And
So you started
uh,
internally. Okay.
Exactly, right. We started building out an AI assistant for our internal staff. We were testing that for many, many months, and it's worked so well that we thought, okay, this is actually something that we should just open up to everybody. And we should kind of provide that as a standalone product. And that takes us kind of to the present day, where 2 weeks ago we launched Limit AI, which is a kind of co-pilot for insurance professionals. It's an AI assistant that is highly knowledgeable about all lines of P&C, right? So personal and commercial. And it's really, really good at analyzing long documents and answering insurance questions about them, right? So imagine,
Mhm.
400-page policy packages, and you want to know kind of whether some specific thing is covered. It's a really easy way to get through it. Or, you can upload 3 different policy forms and grab all of the material differences in seconds. And so you can imagine how useful that's been for us and some of our partners.
Yeah, and there's so many incredible use cases that you and I've talked about in the past with our research on AI, and
Mhm.
I think especially generative AI coming such a big thing in the last couple of years with Chat GPT and whatnot, but this is a use case that I think you know is definitely going to be a huge help to brokers and agents all over, because it's just you're exactly right. So many times that you know, we spend time as agency owners, our staff spends times comparing quotes, looking to make sure do they have the right coverage, do they have the right this, because we want to avoid E&O claims, or we want to make sure that we stand out from the crowd. We want to make sure that we have a value add that we bring to the table besides the cheapest quote.
Of
So,
course.
I think this is huge. So what I wanted to get into before we, I don't want to dive too deep into limit yet because I want to make the audience wait a little bit of anticipation here. But I wanted to hear your thoughts as you've read all the papers from early on, and you and I have both, done our research on it. What are you seeing right now in the industry, or where do you see holes in agencies where AI could be plugged in? You work with 250 plus agencies across the country. What are some other use cases that you're seeing either agencies using or could be using AI to help?
That's a great question, and it's going to have a very broad answer, right?
That's
Because
great.
a lot,
I just want to get
a
the
lot,
ball started.
well, a lot of agencies, um, they have a lot of things in common,
Yeah.
but they also have a lot of things not in common, right? Every firm here operates slightly differently, right? You know how it is. Some folks are just kind of team of elite senior brokers, and they kind of do it all themselves. Other folks have junior agents and assistants, etc. And depending on the kind of lines or kind of market segments that they focus on, their needs can be very different. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with a couple of the big ones, right? Doing all of this document analysis, doing the comparison tasks, and kind of providing that qualitative expertise that gives you some value add beyond just fetching the quote at a reasonable price. I think where we see a lot of other kind of demand is in analyzing contracts, right? We see that a lot in the kind of pro exec space, right? You've got service providers that have hundreds and hundreds of clients. With each of those clients, they have a contractual agreement. The contractual agreement has some clauses about risk and indemnification. Well, we need to understand what all of those contracts say in order to get them insurance coverage that's actually kind of germane to that business. And that's a very lengthy task if you're doing that all by hand.
Well, when you're talking, you brought up pro exec really quick. I don't want to interrupt you, but that's got to be, that's a lot of coverages that your generalist agencies don't normally write. It's a lot more, not, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's a lot, it's different language, I should say. And it's,
Sure.
A lot more intricate, I would think, in detail. And there's a lot more, I don't know. I just think it would be a coverage that would need something to evaluate and a tool to help. And if you can use AI, my question to you really quick, and I'll let you continue on, is when you're using AI to evaluate contracts or look at certain things like that, I'm guessing you're loading the documents in to whatever the software is, it's a lot less chance of hallucinations because you're loading your own documents in. But if you're asking general questions about, say, cyber tech coverages or, D&O, whatever it might be, do you worry about that at all in those situations? Because that could be a huge E&O claim itself.
Yeah, we don't worry about it very much because frankly, like the big chunk of our kind of energy here goes into preventing mistakes, and it's why it's important to have kind of insurance sector specific AI tooling, right? Like I think some of the issues that folks run into with ChatGPT and others is that you get hallucinations because they're very general tools, and consequently they're only so good, right? And they or rather they're pretty good, but they're only so accurate, and they always want to provide confident answers, right? What we've done here is put a large amount of data and like insurance specific data into training our own kind of supplemental models, and then running very, very large kind of suites of tests to ensure that we're answering questions correctly and never overconfidently. And so, we've handled thousands of conversations internally now in production, and we are very, very confident about having solved the kind of hallucination problem for our own purposes internally. I can tell you that much likelier than getting like a hallucination is just cases where like it struggles to read a document that isn't entirely like legible, for example. So we don't worry about kind of that kind of the hallucination set of fears.
Yeah,
We think we've solved that pretty well.
With the AI, do you rely on the AI beyond just evaluation? Do you see agencies, or do you guys as well? Because you said you started internally within your own agency. Do you use the AI for response back to clients or back to, whether it's your agency clients or any other kind of clients?
Well, you can use it to draft emails, so
Sure.
that makes
I just
some
didn't know if
parts
that's
of our
what.
day a little bit easier.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that's what you're seeing or what you guys are doing other than just evaluating? Are you actually saying, okay, do you have it like set up with automations to where once you evaluate and do it, then there's automation to set up the AI to write back with certain tokens to respond and doing? Tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
we don't have it kind of running entirely autonomously. We could, but there's um, we like to use it in a kind of supervised way to supplement the insurance broker, right? To give people a kind of leg up, but to leave the person firmly in control. Um, so the way that we have it, basically, we've got 12 brokers on staff. They're all experts in their respective lines, and they just have a tab open with limit AI at all times, right? And so sometimes they might get some, niche question where it's going to take a really long time to like type up an answer, or where they're being asked to compare several documents, and then they'll just ask that question or upload those documents into limit AI and let that run in the background for a minute. And then they'll use that material, that answer, to get back to the client. And so it's a really effective kind of tool for uh, leaving the broker in charge, but just saving them a little bit of time and energy.
Yeah, and that's what the game's all about right now in our industry, especially in this hard market, is that time
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
efficiency.
Hmm.
And you've talked to me in the past about, before we hit record, even about you felt like, coming from your background, you felt like you had your team or you had the wherewithal or had the knowledge to be able to provide tools for brokerages and agencies out there. Why do you feel like you were the one to be able to? Why do you feel like you had that? Was it a passion of yours, or is it more? You mentioned a mechanical background to me in the past. Where did that come from? Because that's a daunting task sometimes, or overwhelming task to some. But you felt like, you know what, I can do this. John Lober can do
I,
this.
I think it's actually like a demographics thing.
Okay,
Most insurance professionals uh, are not technology professionals, and
right,
most technology professionals are not insurance professionals.
one
In
hundred
in,
percent.
in fact, the two worlds overlap only very rarely, right? Like it's even different on kind of like a geographic basis, right? Like there's a lot of technology folks in the San Francisco Bay Area, but not a lot of insurance folks. And vice versa, right? Like there's a lot of insurance folks in Chicago or in Birmingham, but like not as many technologists.
Well,
And
yeah, same
so,
thing in Arkansas. We can't spell insurance or technology, so we're kind of hindered by both. I think.
yeah, but it's different from like fintech, right? Where finance and technology professionals kind of all
Yeah,
all tend to like live in the same towns. Um, and so I think the background, right, like the skill set or the knowledge, right, that combination is actually just very rare. And that also explains why you see comparatively little entrepreneurship in insurance relative to like its percentage of GDP, right? Insurance in the US, PNC is a $600 billion a year industry. It's
sure.
like quite large,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it doesn't actually have as many startups as you'd expect given the size of that market. And I think that's just like literally like a geography or like a demographics thing. Anyway, that uh, long story short, I think my co-founders and I were kind of in this unique background where we actually had the knowledge and the skill set to take a stab at it. Um, and then, once we're coming in with that kind of like relative comparative advantage, then it all just kind of like makes sense to give it a try, right? Because we've already got some native advantage here.
yeah. And now, have you, have you seen, some pretty positive, response from, let's start off with
Yeah.
internally in your own team. You said you started off internally. Is that
Hmm.
something you intentionally went to your team and say, hey, what are some of the problems you guys are facing, whether it's in underwriting or whether it's in talking to agents or collecting data or contacting, whatever it might be? Did you start there?
Yeah. I mean, I think that um, your own team internally is always just going to give you the fastest and kind of most honest feedback.
Yeah, whether you like it
Um,
or not.
yeah, I mean it's just you could do the same with by going to like external customers, but if you're going to external customers, then the relationship is a little bit different. It's going to take more time to
Yep.
kind of meet, learn, try something, turn around,
Yeah.
etc. Um, and so doing things with your own team internally first just gives you like kind of a it gives you kind of like a speed advantage, right? You can just iterate a lot faster.
Yeah, I would, I always say, and I wrote, an ebook on, AI and agencies and the
Hmm.
advantages you could have. And one of the things I talked about, I'm going to write another one soon, I'm sure, a follow up, but because you always have to be updating on that kind of thing. But
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the things I talked about, I still think is applicable today. And that's a hard word for me to say, applicable. It sounds funny, applicable. But anyway, so the thing about that I still think is applicable today, I had to say it again, is I think you should, before you even buy anything, because I see a lot of insurance people out there get, whether they're on the carrier side, agency side, brokerage, whatever, they get that shiny object syndrome, and they want to just, oh, it's AI or it's this or it's
Yeah.
pretty. Everybody's using it, but before you even buy anything, before you even implement AI at all in your agency, I really feel like it's important you sit down internally with your team and say, okay, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? Where do we need help? Where can we be more efficient? And really take a pulse of your team, whether you're a 1 man or 2 man shop, or whether you're Aon or a
Right.
Marshberry or a larger shop.
Hmm.
Um, you obviously feel the same way, but I just wondered if you could expand on that a little bit.
um yeah, I think um kind of like what we were discussing earlier, all agencies are kind of alike in a number of key respects, but then also different and kind of in the details of how they operate. So a lot of the things that we we try to solve with AI kind of first and foremost are the general problems that everybody has, right? So
Yeah.
answering questions about kind of PNC, right? Like getting competent kind of like expertise ad, and then just analyzing these huge documents.
Yeah.
Um, the next step is generating documents. So we've got a feature that's going to come out pretty soon where we're going to automatically fill in certificates of insurance and quote proposals. So imagine you can just take a quote or a policy and say turn this into a proposal with like my agency letterhead and kind of all of the things that I like to have in my proposal. And I think that's going to save folks a ton of time. And similar stuff on the certificate side, right? Like those can be pretty time consuming to fill out. Um, and this those types of insights aren't rocket science, right? Like these are like the most common problems that most agencies have. Um, but then I think when you get into the subtleties of, well, how exactly do we need to solve it? How fast does it need to be? What is the right interface for presenting this functionality to the user? That's where being able to rely on like your team internally really comes in, because some of these are very nuanced and like very tricky questions where you want to make sure that you've got a really kind of tight understanding of what the real needs of the user are rather than just kind of going by your intuition.
Yeah, no, I love that answer because I think you're right, and I think going back to what you said earlier, starting with your own team makes a lot more sense than trying to A/B test externally because they're going to be a lot more honest with you. They're going to tell you, where the warts are and where the tough things are. But one of the other things that I see as a huge advantage, and there's so many, but for sake of time, you and I discussed a little
Mhm.
bit even training the next generation, training new staff, training agencies, training brokerage, training underwriters, training in general in our space, I think is a huge opportunity with AI because it's all
Mhm.
right there. Instead of having to research um, 15 websites or whatever. Now there is things like Ermi and Reference Connect and some of those places that are phenomenal. A shout out to
Mhm.
Vertifora, Reference Connect. But I think
Mhm.
also even taking a step further and going into AI, going into ChatGPT, going into whatever the software might be, um, and saying what is like some of the things that you guys do, with the pro exec space, I've never sold before because that's just a niche,
Mhm.
such a niche area. So I could see we're going into, AI and asking those questions, especially in generative AI, of what are some use cases, what are some of this, what are some common claims that happen, so that when I am going to sell that, I can be like, hey, let's go see about preventing this or that. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I think there are you're raising 2 points, both of which I think are really important, right? The first is generational transition and training, right? Like there are a lot of folks right now who are very senior in their careers who kind of getting into the position where they need to kind of pass on the book, pass on some of that business to the next generation. Um, that implies a lot of training, and there isn't as much talent going into the insurance industry as there used to be in prior years. And
Yeah.
so, there's like a bit of a supply and demand issue, right? And if you can use AI to supplement some of that training, right? Give some of those junior brokers and kind of folks who maybe are active only in a couple of lines some tooling that allows them to expand their expertise. I think for a lot of agencies, that really helps meet that transitioning problem, right? Where suddenly it gives them a way to upskill a bunch of their junior and mid-career brokers, getting them tools that kind of provide them more depth of expertise in their given lines, but also allow them to service a broader set of lines more easily. And the broader part here, I think, is really important as well. I'm curious, kind of, for you to share your perspective here, like as an agency owner with the audience, right? You mentioned you never really sold pro exec, but I think it I think it so happens that um, while for a lot of agencies, pro exec products are uncommon, um, they're high value, right? And they happen to also be wanted by your most high value clients, right? Like it's the bigger companies that are going to need D&O or crime coverage or things like that. Um, and so it creates this like competitive problem almost where, if you've got a client that's like a great client and they want to get D&O, well, you kind of don't want them to go to a different broker to get the D&O part, because then that gives that other broker a wedge to take over the entire client's business. And so I think it's important to give, you know, small and independent agents additional tools that allow them to compete more effectively against their bigger competitors in the marketplace. And I think AI can really help with that kind of thing. What do you
Yeah,
think?
kicking this back to me a little bit, my issue is, and I'll push back a tad because the platform I've stood on for so long is, focusing on individual niches or focusing on what you know best, staying in your lane, and not trying to write something that you're not used to. Like when I was an agency owner, I tried to dip my toe in trucking, for example, because it was low hanging fruit. I
Mhm.
felt like it was easy. They had the safer website. You can go on there. You can look up anything you want to know. You have an unlimited supply of leads. So I thought, I'll get to trucking. I didn't know the first damn thing about trucking. So I failed miserably. I started drowning. And then,
Mhm.
early in my career, just like most people, I was like, okay, I'll try, this niche or that niche. And I tried to get into nonprofits. And again, coming back to some of the same language we're talking about here with the pro exec, there was a lot of coverages within nonprofits I just couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And but I knew for me, and I think a lot of agencies, I would stand on this ground too. And so this might be controversial for some to hear, but I just think it's tough nowadays to be a generalist in certain aspects. But back to your point, a generalist agency could do a better job of writing pro exec and doing some of those things. However, I just think coming down the line, it's going to make it difficult because they don't have the experience. They don't know how to handle the claims. They don't know what to look for. They don't know these things. But again, an AI can only take you so far on some of those
Right.
things. Some of that just comes with experience. So again, I I struggle with that idea of using AI to help you break into other spaces that you're not used to. But you're right, it can't help. I just personally not a fan of it. And that may be my old school 44-year-old nature coming out. But anyway, I don't know if that answered your question as you flipped it on me a little bit.
It does. I think it's a good perspective. I think it can be tricky to break into new lines, and it really depends on kind of the product and the client. But I think what we've seen is, and I know that we've been talking about pro exec here for a couple of minutes. I think you can kind of frame it more broadly as like any specialty product that like an agent
Yeah.
doesn't have expertise in. Um, I think so. It might include some like really tricky property stuff as well that maybe they're not used to placing. Um, let me think about how to deliver this. I think one thing that we've seen from kind of the carrier side is that they've been making a lot of these products a lot more accessible. Right? So even specialty products like D&O, for example, they're not as tricky as they used to be 10 years ago. Right? There are now a lot of MGAs and carriers that kind of offer D&O through, online portals
Yeah.
that make it pretty easy to understand the coverage, and they've kind of targeted it as at smaller businesses as well. And so in some respects, some of these specialty products have become less specialty over time, right? There's a saying that some folks in cyber like, which is that kind of cyber is like the new GL.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Where it starts out as a really specialty product, but then at first it's only kind of for mid-market enough businesses, but then it comes down kind of down market. It becomes kind of simpler, a little bit better understood, and available on fairly low limits and at fairly low costs. And now, I mean, and in many cases, it even becomes a product that's sold on an admitted basis, right? And now you have this like really interesting transition point where something that used to be specialty, like true kind of go through a wholesaler specialty, becomes pretty accessible to the retail agent.
Yeah.
And then kind of the gap from the retail agent's current expertise to being able to also then sell that product, suddenly that's a small gap, right?
Yeah.
Much smaller than for example, the maybe the gap that you mentioned in trucking, right, where it can get really tricky really quickly. um and I think that uh when we're talking about kind of small gaps like that, that's something where a motivated agent can figure it out on their own pretty well, and they can use AI to kind of help them bridge that gap as well.
Yeah. I also think, going back to, because I can't believe, we're coming up on the hour, but the top of the
Hmm.
hour, but I do think going back to the generational, conversation we were having, I do see, surprisingly, I guess, I was surprised at this, I should say, it's extended the careers of some of the more experienced generation, to be safe.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, and people know that my father, who's 80 years old, and a lot of his friends that are a little bit older in age, maybe not quite 80, but there's this time with like, man, using automation, using AI, using some of these tools, now they're able to extend their career because they don't have to spend as much time. Because my father grew up in the days of handwriting apps and apps on napkins for their so to speak, and you
Right.
know things like that. But now, with being able to even like when my father found, this is not AI, but when my father found the voice to text on his
Hmm.
laptop and he could just dictate. I mean, he's writing a book right now solely off dictating, and about his life or whatever, and some other things. I'm like, that's so cool because my dad would have never been able to type. He doesn't have the dexterity to type it like that anymore. But just to be able to,
Right. Right.
you know what I mean? It's crazy. So, and but I just think I, I guess going back to what I was saying a minute ago, I'm seeing AI and technology extend the careers of maybe
Yeah.
some boomers and some older Gen Xers.
I think that's 100% right because in many cases the question is like, why would they want to transition the work to somebody else? Well,
Yep.
because it's too much work, right? They want to spend their time on other things. But well, if it's too much work, maybe there's a way to kind of eliminate some of the work without giving it up entirely, right? Maybe, what would that person's world look like if they just had 2 or 3 times as many people on their staff as they do currently? Um, and I think that's kind of what AI can give to some of these folks, right?
Sure.
Instead
I
of
completely
having
agree.
just one assistant, what if they kind of have the equivalent of three, and suddenly like a previously big workload becomes small enough that now it's entirely manageable again, and maybe now they can keep running with it for however many more years they like because it's so much more manageable, and
Yeah.
I think there's real opportunity in that for those folks.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, one last thing I'll get into as we, begin to start the wrap up here, which I'm notorious for saying that, and then we'll go even longer. But no, so one of the sponsors of my show, good friend of mine from California, as you mentioned earlier, San
Hmm.
Francisco area, is Canopy Connect. I don't know how familiar you are with
Hey.
Canopy Connect, but Tolga's doing some big things over there. They've got a lot going on, and he's really over the last 4 or 5 years worked really hard to change the game, even on the intake process of
Hmm.
information from prospects. And what you're talking about, some of the things you guys are even doing at Limit, and what AI can do. As they gather this data, I don't know if you're familiar with what Canopy Connect does, but as they gather
Yeah.
the data from the deck pages, that could go straight into AI to evaluate coverages and some of those things like that. And there's other tools out there, but just because Tolga's my friend, well, I'll go with Canopy Connect on that. There's a lot of things like that could be done in the intake process that is usually what takes a lot of time from underwriters and agencies and CSRs and account managers. Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I think I'd go so far as to say it's a little bit unfortunate, kind of what people in the industry are forced to spend time on, because it's a lot of stuff like what you just described, right? Like client intake, get all of the existing policies, read the deck pages, copy paste the information in the deck pages into management system, read everything that's been collated, figure out kind of what additional coverages need to be purchased to kind of like supplement what the agent already has. Um, right, like something like that is laborious, right? It takes a lot of time, and kind of hunting and pecking through deck pages and then writing up those notes. That's it's very rote, right? And I
Yeah.
think the thing that people really get into the industry for, which is to look at interesting problems about managing risk, and building human relationships, right? That's the real meat of what people want to do. And the more tooling that we have that allows us to kind of get away from the, call it like the paperwork aspect, and toward the, intellectual like evaluation, management of risk, and the human like building of relationships, right? Like that's I think that's kind of where we're professionals in our space want to be, right? Get more time for those topics, and kind of less time opening up quotes and control effing for key
Yeah,
terms, right?
you're exactly right. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, we've talked about it, throughout here and there, but I'd love to know a little bit more specifically about what you're doing at Limit. Is it limit.com, Limit AI, Limit,
Yeah, limit.com.
limit.com? Tell me a little bit about that, and tell the audience, I know you're still pretty early on. Tell me a little bit about Limit.
Yeah. I think the big and exciting thing is just we've released our AI assistant about 2 weeks ago. It's still kind of in private beta, so there's a wait list. You can sign up, and then we'll onboard you as we become ready. We've been slowly kind of letting folks onto the platform here over the last couple of weeks, and giving them the opportunity to try it out. It's been really exciting kind of seeing all of that initial usage and adoption. It's very, very cool. We think that the kind of tooling that we're providing is helping agents save a lot of time on all of these kind of question answering, document analyzing type tasks. And we are hard at work to ship more of those, right? So I mentioned earlier, generating proposals, generating certificates, all of these types of things. Our ambition here is to build this very, very fulsome assistant that can handle all of these, little tasks from throughout the day that come up and otherwise take up so much agent time. We see that pitch resonating really well with independent agents as well as brokers at the big national shops. So we think there's value here for everybody, and we're just excited to take this new product to market here over the next couple of months.
So tell me this real quick. What is the difference in limit.com and having a bot in your agency?
Yeah, I think sometimes people ask us kind of like, hey, what's the difference between like Limit AI and ChatGPT? Earlier you kind of mentioned kind of
Like
the hallucination.
yeah, well, I mean, specifically talking like robot process automation. Like when you have a robot that can come in your agency and you can see it clicking and doing some of the things going behind the scenes in an assistant format. And if you can tell the audience what the difference in that and then Limit and what you guys are doing is.
Yeah. We unlike some RPA, we don't yet take actions on your behalf, right? So, we don't want our assistant to kind of click through carrier portals for you just yet.
Okay.
Because we want, this is a tool for insurance professionals, right? We want the insurance professional to be firmly in control. We just want them to save some time and to save some energy. And that's what we think is kind of like the right balance of like power and responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, I think where we really shine, and where we've put a lot of kind of time and effort into, is document analysis, right? So right now, if you were to feed, like a 400-page policy package into ChatGPT or something, I don't think that you would get results that are very appropriate. And you run all kinds of potential kind of hallucination issues and such, as you mentioned earlier, right? Because those tools are just not special cased for
Yeah.
insurance, or for kind of, really voluminous texts where every word matters.
Sure.
And so that's where we're focusing on differentiating ourselves and putting a really high accuracy specialized product into the market.
Love it. And so you're talking about like a true virtual assistant. Right now in our space for the last 10 years, virtual assistants meant, assistant from the Philippines or from Mexico or from overseas
Right.
somewhere that could come in for a little less than the labor cost and could do so many things well. And I think that's a great thing we brought into our industry is virtual assistants. And but you're talking about a true virtual assistant.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think there's some overlap between
Yeah.
kind of what current like physical VAs do and what digital VAs do are going to do in the future, because a lot of it is similar types of tasks, right? Like reading long documents, copy pasting, all of this information, writing up templated documents, etc. Right? I think to its credit, like the insurance industry has already tried to offload some of this rote work in this manner. But I think that these AI innovations are really going to supercharge that, right? I think we're going to see work, like we're going to see a greater scope of work get offloaded to solutions that are going to, be like instantaneous and always available, which is just different from the current paradigm.
Yeah, it's funny to me to see. I mean, we keep talking in our industry from back even when I was first getting in before Google, and now it's
Mm-hmm.
like quicker, 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 quicker. Quicker. It feels like we're getting to a place to, people just want to wake up. If they think about insurance and they got a quote in their mind, and it's like, I mean, how much quicker can we get? Now we're getting down to like milliseconds, of saving time and like with like for Canopy Connect. I mean, like in like 10, 15 seconds, you can go from, log in to all the documents you need. And it's like, how much faster can we get? And so even with AI, it's like, wow. I mean, are we really talking seconds?
Yeah, I mean, if you zoom kind of way into the future here, uh, consider an analogy from the financial markets. Um, I think it is remarkable that if I want to hedge some risk, right? Like let's say like a weather risk or something. Um, I could go into like my online brokerage account and I could buy like a futures contract or an option on like, you know, rubber plantations in Malaysia, for example, right? Like I can just buy that and I could buy it at the click of a button. Like there's pricing, it takes 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so if if in financial markets I can hedge like a super obscure risk in like 5 seconds from my phone, why should it take 3 weeks
Yeah.
to buy like $700 slip and fall coverage for my office,
No,
right?
strong point.
And and I think you're gonna see some of these insurance products become just as accessible and kind of instantaneous as some of the like financial products.
No, that makes sense.
Not all of them, of course, right? Like insurance is complicated. Oftentimes there's a lot of nuance. Like you really need to spend some time like negotiating like the actual
Yeah.
coverages, the language. But for some products that are super standardized, I mean we've already seen some of them turn basically instantaneous. And I think that trend's going to continue.
Yeah. Is there anything else before we head off about what you guys are doing at Limit or contact info or anything that we did not get into? I've enjoyed this conversation, and we were supposed to end 20 minutes ago, and here we are still talking. So I've enjoyed the conversation. I always do when we start talking about AI and my passion for insurance. So anyhow, back to you. Anything else we did not get
Yeah,
into?
I mean, I think we covered it. We kind of covered it all. I mean, if for folks in the audience, right, if you're curious about how AI can help your company or you as an insurance professional, head to limit.com/AI and you can read a little bit about what we've been up to and see some demos and make it all tangible. I know that we've been just kind of talking here in the abstract, but I think it's always nice to see a video, see the interface, etc., for yourself. And as you can tell, I love talking shop. So
Yeah.
if you're ever curious about kind of any of these topics, you can just write to me at john@limit.com. And I love getting emails and kind of talking about the future of the industry with folks.
And if anyone wants to get in that pro exec space, or they're in that space, is there a separate brokerage for that?
Oh, it's also under Limit. It's also under limit.com.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
so
your
we've
brokerage
just
too.
got two big products. Yeah, same brand.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm so glad and thankful for Broker Brett for introducing. And man, good luck with everything. And I'll have to bring you back on and follow up and see. Are you doing any kind of funding or anything? Or are you just, you guys doing this all on your own?
We've raised about 14.5 million over
Okay.
the lifetime of the company.
I got you. Okay.
And yeah, so we are doing everything that we can to
Perfect.
build something really really special here.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much. If anybody's interested, reach out to him, john@limit.com. And man, we'll follow up soon, man. And we'll talk here in a minute.
Keep you posted. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yep.
All right.